The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Hope your weekend was fantastic. Commanders, I think, will be on the field tomorrow for OTAs. Phase 3, final stages of Phase 3. We'll talk about that tomorrow. I think we'll hear from, some of the staff. I'm assuming Joe Witt Jr., similar to last week. Heard from head coach Dan Quinn. Heard from offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. So I think they'll flip it this time. We'll probably hear from Joe Witt Jr. That's my guess. Jayden Daniels again. And then maybe a couple of other players last week. I think we saw Tyler Biotish step to the mic. Then there were a couple of media scrums. Frankie Louvu, Debo Samuel, among others. So I think you'll see something similar to that tomorrow, I believe. Don't get me, don't hold me to that. I believe the media will be allowed into practice tomorrow. It's going to be a beautiful day, so they'll be able to be outside, unlike the last time where they had to be in the bubble. So hopefully we'll get some reports. And Marshawn Lattimore not going to be in attendance. Don't look for Laramie Tunzel. It's not a big deal. Again, it's not a big deal until it is. Next week, when they have their mandatory minis, I expect everyone to be there. Maybe even Terry shows up. May not do anything, but he might show up. It wouldn't shock me if he's not there altogether. But again, that isn't a big deal. All right. So what I want to talk about tonight is the expectation or expectations for the upcoming season for the youth of this Commanders franchise and roster. Last year's draft was a foundational draft. It was laying the concrete and setting a stable foundation for everything that is to follow. Jayden Daniels draft pick, Mikey Sainristil's draft pick. We're hoping Johnny Newton and, Ben Sinnott, but Brandon Coleman seems like he's going to be a guy that we can rely on that offensive line. We don't know where at this current juncture, but it feels like it's going to probably be that left side that he was on last year, just instead of being at tackle, kicking inside the guard. But he seems like a very reliable piece. Jordan McGee is a guy that I am still banking on to be a really good player. I was all in on Jordan McGee last year when we drafted him. I am all in on Jordan McGee again this year. So this has a chance. Luke McCaffrey, obviously, those first 6 picks in particular, 7 actually, we would throw McGee in there. I think they have a chance to be really big time contributors. That's what you want your first draft to be, right? Transformative. That's what it looks like just off the strength of Jayden Daniels and Mikey Sainristil already. But when you get Brandon Coleman's production from last year and you think that it's going to spike and be even better with a healthy offseason, 1, and 2, probably going to a more natural fit for his skill set at the NFL level, you expect him to become an even better player and blossom. We'll talk about that tonight. Ben Sinnott going into year 2. I think his pick, his selection last year shows that this organization is up there with the best run organizations in football. I will explain that tonight. That was a genius selection by the Commanders last year. And, I'll explain more when we get to Ben Sinnott. But Johnny Newton, he's the one, right? I'm looking at it and I'm saying, hey, you. I need it this year. I need you to step up and be the guy that we felt like we stole as a first-round talent in the second round. And much like Brandon Coleman, who didn't have a full, off season or training camp, I should say. Coleman was fine throughout until training camp. Newton did not have a full off season last year, coming off of surgery. Then we find out he needed another foot surgery, which put him out even longer. And so his whole entire offseason and rookie year was somewhat marred by foot surgery. 2 of them. Fully healthy. We want to see the guy that we felt like we stole as the 36th pick overall in the 2024 NFL draft. We'll talk more about the expectations for Jayden Daniels, Johnny Newton, Mike Sainristil, Ben Sinnott, Brandon Coleman, Luke McCaffrey, Jordan McGee, Dominique Hampton, right? These are all year 2 guys. Javonte John Baptiste, all year 2 guys. What does year 2 look like for these players? What should we expect? What are reasonable expectations for these guys? Same could be said for the 2025 class that was just selected. They're coming into a group that went to the NFC Championship game a year ago. Expectations are high. And yes, I am here to tell you that it is okay to have high expectations. The bar should be set high. It's okay to set the expectations ridiculously high. And if they don't hit them, okay, it beats the alternative of what we used to do to make ourselves feel better about a season that was probably going to be ass, which was set the bar. And I know I was very guilty of this, and I'm not ashamed of it, because you find ways to cope. You find ways to make yourself feel better about what you know is ultimately going to be another lost season. So you tell yourself, hey, this is the bar. You set it low, and if they meet it, great. If they exceed it, even better. But your expectation is that they're going to fall below that bar. And at least if it's set extremely low, you're not going to be all that disappointed. Well, I'd rather set the bar extremely high and watch this team give everything they've got to try and hit it. And if they don't, we'll try again next year. It's a young team. It's year 2. We skipped some steps. When you've got one of them ones, you're allowed to do that. Now let's see what he's got for an encore. But these 2025 rookies, they're walking in to a situation where, hey, unlike last year where we were just looking for guys to come in here and show that we had the makings of a foundation that we could build upon. That's all we were looking for from Jayden Daniels and Mikey Sainristil and Johnny Newton and Ben Sinnott and Brandon Coleman and Luke. We're just looking for guys that we can say, okay, you're a part of the foundation. You're a piece that we're going to need moving forward. You're a guy that we're going to have here for a long time. That's all we were looking for, to identify good, quality, talented football players that were young and going to be a part of this movement into the future. Same thing we're looking for in 2025, but it's a little bit different. Because of how well last season went, you're not looking for guys to just come in here and prove that they can play and feel good about your 2nd round pick. No. We're asking Trey Amos to come in here and be a starting caliber corner right out of the gates. And we're not looking for the growing pains of a rookie, which are going to happen. We want him to come in here guns a-blazing on some top 5 pick type shit. And some of you are going to set the bar extremely high for him, which is probably, to me, I don't want to say unreasonable, but I think it's unfair. I think it's unfair what we're going to ask of some of these guys. Because of what last year was, they have no choice but to come in here and either hit the ground running or stand off to the side and watch as we try to get back to where we were a season ago. And it's tough because the guys from last year's draft class didn't have this type of pressure coming in. It was actually the direct opposite, right? There were no expectations. There was no pressure. It was a recalibration. We were trying to find our north last year, this time. Fast forward a year to present day, and we're talking about trying to win a Lombardi. We don't have time for Josh Connolly to come in here and not be ready. He better be ready to do something. Same with Trey Amos. We don't have time for him to not be ready. Jalen Lane, if he does nothing but special teams, we're fine with that. But a lot of us expect him to contribute on offense as well. It's not okay for him to just be a special teams guy, even though it should be. He's a 4th-round pick. That's a day 3 selection, folks. But it's a little different for them. We'll get to the 2025 draft class and the expectations that I think are reasonable for them. But we're going to start with the 2024 draft class, the second-year guys, and what some reasonable expectations should be for them. Let's start with the reason why we're even having this conversation. El Capitan, the new El Capitan. JD5, a.k.a. JD Cinco, or Cinco, a.k.a. one of them ones. I got 5 on it. I'm going to allow everyone else to tell you what the numbers are going to look like. I'm not going to say that I don't care, because that would be disingenuous. Of course I care about what his numbers look like, because with numbers come accolades. With accolades, a lot of times comes victories, or I should say that in the proper order. With numbers, no, I said that right, because with numbers come accolades. With accolades come victories. Because you can have the numbers, but if you don't win, then you don't get the accolades. So, but you don't necessarily, as the Eagles proved last year, you don't have to have the numbers to win. You don't have to have the numbers to win. But I'm chasing after wins. And he's going to have to produce numbers. We don't have the Philadelphia Eagles roster. We don't have the Baltimore Ravens roster. Okay? He's going to have to go out there and play the kind of football that he played last year to give us a shot again this year. So for me, my expectation is for year 2 growth, expansion of his game. There's so many people out there that want to see Jayden Daniels take a step back. I can't tell you how many different fans of different fan bases are talking about how epic it's going to be, and it's going to be a movie, his step back in his sophomore year. This sophomore slump is going to be a movie, and they're going to be so disappointed. I mean, they really, truly are. As long as JD5 is healthy and on the field, he is going to wreak havoc over this league. He is one of them ones. And he's going to solidify that this year on a national stage, as the Commanders are one of 3 teams with 8 standalone primetime games. So they'll see almost half of our games will be nationally televised with nobody else on to watch but us. Okay? We have 17 regular season games. 8 of them will be nationally televised. My expectation for Jayden Daniels is extremely high. He did it. He set the bar at this ridiculous level last year. And now that is the standard. That is the expectation. So don't ask me what the yards are going to be or how many touchdown passes, how many touchdown runs, how many yards he's going to rush for. This is all I know. Jayden Daniels is going to play, and the expectation is at an MVP caliber level. Whatever that looks like for you, that's what it's going to be. Okay? Whether that's 4,500 yards passing and 37 touchdowns, through the air and another 9 to 11 on the ground, whatever that looks like for you. I know he's going to do whatever it takes to put us in a position to win ball games. The one thing I do expect, and I hope I'm wrong about this, is I do expect a slight uptick in turnovers from Jayden Daniels this year. As much as I would like that number to be decreased a bit. I think he had 9 interceptions last season, if I'm not mistaken. As much as I would like to see that number decreased, and it may. I don't know if he lost a fumble last year. I'd have to go look that up. Somebody fact check me on that. I don't think he lost. I'm trying to play back in my mind all of the games and just going through the mental Rolodex of games from last season. I don't recall us losing a fumble all last year at the hands of Jayden Daniels. So I can't even remember the ball being on the floor. Maybe the first game of the season against Tampa. I don't think there were many instances where that ball was pried free. He has a great and uncanny ability to have spatial awareness, to know where guys are at all times. So he's never there. It's rare that he gets hit from behind and doesn't know that someone's behind him. That's how you fumble a lot of times. It's just not knowing, right? He had to have fumbled at some point, and we had to have lost a fumble at some point last year, but because that's crazy, especially in your rookie season. But I just don't remember. But if I had to guess, I would say that there will be a slight uptick. He'll have double-digit turnovers, but it'll be drowned out by the amount of touchdowns that he accounts for. I think the number was 34 total last year. I think he had 9 rushing, or how many did he have rushing? It was something like 7 rushing and another 25 passing or something like that. I'd have to look it up. And he's going to exceed 40 total touchdowns this year. So it'll be drowned out. Whatever it is, turnover to touchdown to turnover ratio for him total. Whatever it is, it'll be north of 4-1, whatever it is. I don't know what it was this year. I doubt that it was north of 4-1, whatever it was, because again, I don't think he had double-digit rushing touchdowns. And I think he only had 20. I think he had 25. He might have had 28 passing touchdowns. I don't think it was 36-9, like total, right? So whatever that number was this year, he's going to improve on that. A touchdown to turnover ratio is going to exceed 4, which anything over 4 is ridiculous, right? The best quarterbacks, coming up, watching Brady and Rodgers and guys who just didn't turn it over. There'd be years where, Brady would throw 35 touchdowns and only 6 interceptions, right? And you're almost talking about a 6-1. And Brady didn't fumble very often, right? So Brady wasn't running for very many touchdowns either. So that's another element that he adds to the equation. But when it's all said and done, I expect Jayden Daniels to play at an MVP caliber level. He is right now, I think, 6th in MVP odds, 6th or 5th, right where he should be. And I expect him to play as a guy that is squarely in the mix for, the MVP, right? At one point last year, we were trying to push him into that conversation. And then the 3-game losing streak hit, and that was that. That was it. You know what I mean? If he's healthy this entire season, there's no reason why he won't get MVP votes and be squarely in that conversation. That's my expectation for Jayden Daniels, is that he will be better pretty much in every statistical category across the board. Maybe the rush yards go down. We're hoping that we take some of that off his plate. We don't want him having to be Lamar Jackson and having to rush for 1,000 yards. We don't want him to have to do that. But if it happens, we're not turning it down, right? Because they're going to run him. He's a part of the run game. They're not going to shy away from that. He's a part of the run game. And we're still waiting on our 62-yard, 71-yard touchdown scamper. We're still waiting on that. It was supposed to happen in that Carolina game. So we're still waiting for that 55-yard touchdown run. We haven't gotten one of those yet. That's on deck. So the rush yards may just increase just off the strength of him breaking some big ones this year. But my expectation for him is to show and confirm that he is in fact and indeed one of them ones, and without question, the best quarterback in the NFC. That is the goal, because there's still some good quarterbacks in the conference that could step forward this year, i.e. Jordan Love. So I don't want there to be any conversation. No Jalen Hurts conversations, even though that really doesn't exist for me. No Jordan Love conversations. We know who's the cream of the crop in the conference. That's what this year is supposed to be for Jayden Daniels. And that's what I expect. That's what I expect. With an improved offensive line, better weaponry around him, I can't see how his trajectory isn't continuing to go up. Johnny Newton. Let's talk about our first of 3 second-round picks from 2024. Last year, Johnny Newton, these are what his numbers look like. Johnny Newton played in 16 games. If you recall, he missed the very first game of the season against Tampa. Still, rehabbing and getting himself into shape from the offseason surgery. But he played in every game after that. So he played in 16 games, 11 starts. Obviously, once you had the injury, to Jonathan Allen, Johnny Newton had to be thrusted into the lineup. Started 11 games. In those 11 games that he started, in the 16 games that he played total, he amassed 2 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, and 7 quarterback hits, and a pass deflected at the line of scrimmage. All of this was done while playing 51% of the defensive snaps. So, here's the first thing that we would like to see, or I would like to see from Johnny Newton in the upcoming season. Let's get you going for all 17 of these things. That's the first thing, is we need health. The best of ability is availability. So let's get you going for 17 games. Next thing is, I need you to be starting. for 17 games. Now, again, this is tricky. This is the tricky part. Because I've already told you what I think the starting defensive line is going to look like. And it does not include Johnny Newton. Okay? I've already told you that I think Dietrich Wise is starting at one defensive end. Dorrance Armstrong Jr. is starting at the other defensive end. And Deron Payne and Javon Kinlaw are your two starting defensive tackles. So Johnny Newton doesn't fit into that equation. But you could see a defensive line that features Kinlaw at defensive end, Dorrance Armstrong at the other defensive end, and Johnny Newton and Deron Payne on the interior. If he doesn't start games, he's going to play a ton of snaps. So I'm not too concerned about the starts, although I would like him to start. That's why you spent a second-round pick on him. But they also spent $15 million a year over 3 years, $45 million rather, over 3 years, 15 per on Javon Kinlaw. We know he's starting. We know Dorrance is starting, and we know Deron Payne is starting. So either Kinlaw's playing inside, and they're going to move him around, but he's starting the game inside, and that's going to put Dietrich Wise at defensive end with no Johnny Newton starting, or they're going to start Kinlaw as a defensive end, and that gives Newton an opportunity and opens up the door for him to be your other starting defensive tackle. Whatever the case may be, I need him to be prepared to play closer to 60% of the defensive snaps this upcoming season. I need him to be prepared to do that. So we see an increase in how often he is called upon to be on the field. And I need an uptick in every single number that I just gave you from his rookie season, which I fully expect. Okay. At 295 pounds, Johnny Newton is undersized. If you're an undersized defensive tackle, sub 300 pounds in this league, I expect you to be wreaking havoc on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. That is why you are in the game. As an undersized defensive lineman, your biggest attribute and benefit to the defense is supposed to be quickness and your ability to beat whomever is in front of you and create disruption on the opposite side of the LOS. So, with that said, I need him to, at a bare minimum, double his sack total from his rookie season, from 2 to 4. I'm really looking for 6. But let's split the difference. I want to be greedy and ask for 6. I'm okay with 4. Let's split the difference and let's call it 5. Worst case scenario, 4.5. But let's say 5 sacks for Johnny Newton this season. It's not unreasonable. Fully healthy, full off season. 6 tackles for loss last year. I want to be greedy and have him double that total, but that's asking a lot. Let's just get that number. Let's get it snugged up real close, because I want to say 12. Which would be double of what he had last year. But let's snuggle up next to double digits and cut it in half and say 9, right? 9 on the other side of the line of scrimmage. I really want double figures. Because, again, as a undersized, disruptive defensive tackle, you should be getting in the backfield. And, again, even if that number is 8 or 9, but there were plays that he didn't make the tackle, so he doesn't get credit for it, but he blew up the play. That's good enough for me. A lot of times you can't measure a defensive lineman strictly off of his stats. You look at Jalen Carter's stats of the Philadelphia Eagles, and his stats don't tell the story. You know, his numbers don't jump out at you. But you watch him and you're like, no. He's wreaking havoc. Same can be said for other guys across the league. Jeffrey Simmons is another guy who his numbers don't necessarily jump out and grab you, but you watch Jeffrey Simmons play and you know what type of time he's on, what kind of havoc he can wreak on a football game. Quarterback hits. This is something else. Again, I need Newton to really be like, again, he may not rack up the sacks, but I need him to hit the quarterback, disrupt the quarterback. I am looking for that quarterback hit number to be doubled. I am looking for 14 quarterback hits. I am looking for that. I don't expect you to get there, 6 or 7 times, even though I would like 6. But I do expect you to at least hit the quarterback double as many times as you hit him last year. So that is what I'm looking for from Johnny Newton. 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 14 quarterback hits, 17 games played. We'll see what the starts look like. Really doesn't matter. But I expect him to be in that 58 to 60% defensive snap range this year. Mikey Sainristil. Let's talk about Frozone, who we think is if Jayden Daniels is the offensive building block, we think Mikey Sainristil right now from the young nucleus is the defensive building block. I don't want to say he's the equivalent to Jayden Daniels because there is no equivalent to Jayden Daniels, but he's the guy we look at and say, okay, we know we got one here. Just like we know we got one with Jayden, we got one here with Mikey Sainristil. So let's talk about what he did last year. So Mikey Sainristil played in all 17 games last year. Played in all 17 games. Started all 17 games last year. Keep that up, by the way. 2 interceptions, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery. All that happened on the same play against the Titans. No sacks, no quarterback hits, 1 tackle for loss. Mikey Sainristil played 90% of the defensive snaps. I think that's going to be closer to 100 this year, right? He's going to be a guy that they lean on very heavily. So I'm thinking that number is going to be somewhere in the 95 to 97% cent range, right? When it's all said and done. Here's why, and again, it sucks because Mikey Sainristil's numbers and statistics are really heavily dependent upon other guys doing their job and staying healthy at a high level. What do I mean by that? Simple mathematics, right? The reason he had to kick outside last year was because guys weren't doing their job at a high enough level. Emmanuel Forbes sucked. Benjamin St-Juste sucked. And so did Mike Davis. All right? All of them sucked. So he was forced to have to go outside so that Noah Igbenogany, who could have played outside but was much better inside for the good of the team, he sacrificed his more natural position to help us, and I don't know what we would have done without him. But his numbers suffered because of it. I think in the long run, he becomes a better NFL pro because of what he endured last year. Now he knows the complete secondary. Remember, his former safety, so he already knew about the safety position and all that entailed. But he never played boundary corner before. Now he has. So the reason Mikey's numbers, and obviously he had 2 more interceptions if you count the postseason last year. If you look at Mikey and you look at his numbers from last year, they were solid. But his impact on the game can be so much more dynamic as a nickel corner closer to the line of scrimmage around the football. For starters, that sack and quarterback hit number that's finito. That's done, right? 0 quarterback hits, 0 sacks, not happening again. If he's playing the nickel, they're going to unleash Mikey Sainristil. He will be a guy that they will not be afraid to blitz off that nickel, corner position. And if it turns out to be a run, he had 1 tackle for loss last year. Mikey, he gave us a lot of Kendall Fuller vibes in terms of bottling up wide receiver screens last year. But he was still getting comfortable with the nickel position or the boundary corner position. And so while he trusted what he saw, oftentimes he wouldn't necessarily get there in enough time to make a tackle for a loss, but it'd be a gain of 1 or 2, or it'd be a pass breakup because he blew it up. You put him inside, that could turn into a pick 6. That could turn into a ball that's not backwards, that's a backwards pass that is picked up. Like the play, and I don't think it was a pass per se, but it was that ball that against the Giants, the second game where Daniel Jones fumbles, and that thing went so far back. Nobody was really going after it, and then Bobby just decided, I'm going to go get it and pick it up. And it ended up being a fumble. You can see one of those type situations happen. If he's blitzing and then they throw a toss or something, he redirects. Now he could get back there and blow that run play up for a 3, 4, 5, 6 yard loss. He gets in there as a blitzer, and he's a short tackler, and it's a run blitz, and he gets in there scot-free. You're talking about a 2, 3 yard loss potentially on the play. Like, he's going to be such a weapon. He's going to be Mike Hilton-esque in his prime. He's going to be like Kenny Moore II in Indy, who is one of the most dynamic nickels in the sport. But unlike those guys, he's going to give you some of that Chris Harris Jr. ability to be able to move him outside if need be. So for Mikey inside, I'm doubling the interception total from 2 to 4. The forced fumbles from 1 to 2. I'm doubling that. His sack total, I'm giving him 2.5 sacks on the season, from 0 to 2.5. He's going to have 6 tackles for loss. He's going to be very active around the line of scrimmage. And he's going to have 4 quarterback hits on the season. So he's going to be filling up the stat sheet. Filling up the stat sheet. And I expect him to play anywhere between 95 to 97 defensive snaps. Percent of the defensive snaps, rather. I'm expecting a Pro Bowl caliber season for Mikey Sainristil. And in year 3, now we got to see what this transition for him back to being a nickel, which, look, he's done it before. So this isn't like a new position, but he's going back to nickel and how they utilize him. And if this goes well without a hitch, I'm expecting all-pro behavior from Mikey Sainristil in year 3. So let's see what year 2 looks like first. Let's crawl before we can walk. So I'm looking for Pro Bowl Mikey Sainristil, and then I'm looking for all-pro behavior in year 3. Let's see if he can get to the Pro Bowl first. Let's check off a box. Maybe he skips a step. We'll see. Ben Sinnott. One of the most polarizing Commander picks a season ago. So let's have a Ben Sinnott conversation right now. Let's do that. So I think the organization, first and foremost, sheer genius what they did with Ben Sinnott. Now, Was this done intentionally? No, it wasn't. But they knew this was an unintended benefit of what they did. This is what the good teams do. We weren't in a position to do this. The good teams are in a position to do this. The Ravens can take a second or a third round pick and have no intentions of playing that guy yet. Right? The Eagles can take a Cam Jurgens in the second round and have no intentions of playing him for a couple of years because the roster is set in a way that allows them to be able to absorb a guy that they took on day 2 of the draft and not have to play him. That's not where we were last year. They had every intention of Ben Sinnott playing 70% of the offensive snaps last year. They had every intention of Ben Sinnott, or at least 50% of the offensive snaps, right? 70 might have been a bit too high, but they had every intention of him playing 50% of the snaps offensively. They had every intention of him being a much bigger part of the offense in the pass game. But they didn't know that Zach Ertz was going to turn the clock back to 2019 either. None of us did. You heard DQ. When they signed him, they were expecting him to be a situational guy for them. Third downs, red zone. That's all DQ talked about. Oh, he's going to be a security blanket for Jayden in the red zone. Him and Jayden's connection in the red zone has been special all summer long. That's all they thought Zach Ertz was going to provide for them. And then Ertz came in here and turned the damn clock back to 2019. And they were like, oh, shit. Look what we found. Again, that's found money. We call that found money. You look down and, oh, there's a $20 bill. Wasn't expecting that. Must be my lucky day. That's what Zach Ertz was for us last year. So, in that happening, you, in effect, did what the best organizations do. You draft a player at a position that you know is going to need an upgrade in the near future. And instead of waiting, you were proactive. And now, because you were proactive, Ben Sinnott should be ready in year 2. Understand how a lot of teams get themselves into trouble. And look, not everybody has the ability to draft a guy in the second or the third round and not have expectations for them right away. Most NFL rosters aren't equipped to be able to do that. But the best organizations have the ability to have foresight, and they take guys a year earlier than they have to, so that that guy doesn't have the pressure of having to produce right away. And then when his number is called, he'll be ready. If anything happens to Zach Ertz, God forbid, if anything happens to him this year, I think Ben Sinnott is going to be ready. And they can count on him. Because now you're not dealing with rookie tight end Ben Sinnott, who's still trying to figure out this NFL game and where he fits in. You're not dealing with rookie tight end Ben Sinnott, who ran into the rookie wall last season and started missing assignments and was dealing with a nagging injury and didn't know how to deal with the length of the season coupled with an injury and the things they were asking him to do, which is why you saw his snap count decrease at the end of the season. You're not dealing with that Ben Sinnott anymore. Now you're dealing with a professional second year Ben Sinnott that knows what the NFL has to offer and is prepared to step in if his number is called. If they need a bigger role from Ben Sinnott this year, he will be ready. People act like Ben Sinnott wasn't one of the best athletes at the tight end position in the 2024 draft class. We're not going to act like Ben Sinnott is some chump that they took in the second round, because he's not. He can play ball. All he needs is an opportunity. And I don't know if it's going to come this year or if it's going to come next year. But all I know is when that opportunity does come, he'll be ready. And the team had the foresight to draft this man earlier than maybe they needed to. But they didn't know what they were getting out of Zach Ertz. And they didn't know that Ertz was going to be here for multiple years. They thought Ertz was going to be a one-year Band-Aid solution. At best, Sinnott could learn from him and be ready to step in year 2, similar to Jordan McGee. They didn't know that Bobby Wagner was going to play at the level that he played at last year, and they didn't know Jordan McGee was going to get hurt. We'll talk about him and his situation. But in both of those cases, they may have jumped the gun, but there's an unintended consequence, or in this case, an unintended benefit that's going to come from it that normally the best teams in the league do intentionally. We may have done it unintentionally, but this is a genius move on this staff's part, drafting Ben Sinnott. And I think he's going to be ready in year 2. So Ben Sinnott last year had 5 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown. He had 5 targets on the season. So every pass that was thrown to him, he caught. Now, there wasn't a high degree of difficulty on any of these passes, as you can see, only 28 yards. So most of them were within a yard or 2 of the line of scrimmage. But nonetheless, when his number was called and the ball was thrown in his direction, he caught it. He played in all 17 games last year, despite dealing with the shoulder injury late, down the stretch. He had 2 starts under his belt last year. He played in 27.9%, so roughly 28% of the offensive snaps last year. 28%, which is very low for a second-round pick. However, again, they didn't expect what they got out of Zach Ertz, and John Bates is your number 2 tight end, because if they're running the football, you best believe John Bates is in the game, right? And to a lesser degree, when they're throwing the football, John Bates is probably going to be in the game, especially if they need help, which they did quite often at the tackle positions last year. 33% of the snaps on special teams, which I think you'll see that number be, right in that same general vicinity this year. But I expect the snap counts offensively to go up. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But let's talk about numbers for Ben Sinnott. So I really think that this offense is going to be more dynamic this year. We weren't an explosive offense last year in terms of big plays, and we converted a lot of 3rd downs. We converted a lot of 4th downs last year, and I'm okay with that. Like, we won time of possession most games. We kept this defense off the field that wasn't very good. We controlled games with our offense a lot of times because we didn't punt. We put the ball in the end zone. We applied pressure to teams, and we forced them to have to keep up with us. And doing it in the manner that we did it, we shortened the game, all the while scoring a bunch of points. And so you feel the pressure of, damn, if you're the Tennessee Titans, you look up at the end of the first quarter, it's 21-0. You've barely had the football, and you're down 3 touchdowns. You look up at after the first 3 minutes of the second quarter, you're down 28-0. Well, shit, if we had any plans of running the football, those are gone, right? I mean, look at what Arizona Cardinals did. They ran the ball against us. James Conner had 100 yards rushing in that game. It was rendered irrelevant because we dominated the football in the second half of that game, and we scored touchdowns, and we pushed that lead out to where it didn't matter that he was running the football effectively. You got to throw it now because you got to try to catch up. And, oh, by the way, there's not a lot of time left because we ate up all of that time while scoring those touchdowns. While that's great, I expect more explosive plays this year. And I think one of the guys that's going to open up some things is Ben Sinnott. Right up that seam. Right up that seam. Just like he did in the NFC Championship game on a fourth down on that fake punt. I think he's going to stretch the football field vertically. We saw him do it in the Jets game in the preseason last year. He's athletic enough to do it. I think you're going to see Ben Sinnott really hurt some teams right up that seam. They're going to be so fixated on Terry and Ertz and Debo. Here comes Ben Sinnott. Boop, right up the seam. Nobody's paying attention to 82. I expect Ben Sinnott this year to have 21 catches for 284 yards and 3 touchdowns. I expect Ben Sinnott to have 33, what did I say? 24 catches. I expect him to have 30, however many catches he has, he's going to have 6 more targets than catches. When they throw him the ball, it's not going to hit the ground very often. It's either going to be short, underneath, quick, or it's going to be wide open up the seam. I expect Ben Sinnott to play just a shade under 50% of the offensive snaps. I don't know how the hell that's going to get done. I'm not trying to put anybody out of the lineup. But somehow Ben Sinnott is going to play 48.2% of the snaps this year. If all goes well, he should be hovering around 35% or so, right? Still in this 28% range, but a slight uptick to about 30, somewhere in that 30 to 35% range. But if things don't go as planned, which I'm not assuming that things are going to go off without a hitch, because rarely do they in the NFL, he's going to end up with closer to 50% at 48.2% of the offensive snaps. Ben Sinnott's going to start 5 games this year, and he's going to play in all 17 once again. You'll feel a lot different about Ben Sinnott after this season. I'll just say that. And I wouldn't be shocked if they utilized him in a multitude of ways. Again, I know you guys don't want to hear this. I told you, I felt like they thought he could be similar to a Kyle Juszczyk. But remember when he was drafted, Adam Peters said he was a cross between Juszczyk and George Kittle, right? Not quite the athlete that Kittle, is, but sort of a chess piece like Juszczyk is, but a better athlete than Juszczyk. So he's sort of a hybrid. I wouldn't be shocked if they used him as such this year. Brandon Coleman. Last year, he played in 16 games. If you recall, he missed the Bears game with a concussion. But he started 12. If you also recall, he was doing the platoon thing at the beginning of the year to start with Cornelius Lucas, and didn't actually start games until the 5th week of the season. So he played in 73% of the offensive snaps. I'm looking for that number to be closer to 100 this year, right? Brandon Coleman, he showed me a ton last year. First of all, he showed me toughness, because that shoulder that he injured in the preseason or training camp, it was never fully healthy the entire year. And he gutted it out. And I remember Nick Allegretti talking to him in certain plays and his shoulder popping out of place and Allegretti having to pop it back in and him staying in the game and Allegretti saying, hey, you can do this. You're talking to a guy, Nick Allegretti, that played the Super Bowl with a dislocated elbow. If anybody can tell you, hey, you can do some shit and you can fight and grit through this pain, it's Nick Allegretti. He has a PhD in that shit. So he's telling him, no, you got this, bro. And this is why you need guys like Nick Allegretti. You know, everybody wants to push him out. And look, I'm just all about upgrading. But you need guys like that that's going to be able to say, nah, you got this, bro. You can do this. And Coleman, he gutted it out. And he had a knee injury. And he was fighting through a knee injury. So he showed me some toughness last year. So I know he can play in all 17. The only game he missed, despite having a shoulder injury and a knee injury, was due to a concussion. So hopefully this year he can play. And the only reason that number is at 73 is, remember, Cornelius Lucas, they were splitting reps those first 4 weeks of the season, right? Those first 4 games where it was Cornelius Lucas 51%, Coleman 49%. And it was like that for the first 4 weeks. Then finally they flip-flopped it. Coleman took 51 or 52%, and Lucas dropped down to 49 or 48. And then you started to see it go to 70, and then it went to, all right, it's yours. You've earned it. So I'm looking for him to play in almost all of the snaps this year. But more importantly, I'm looking for him to solidify himself as the starting left guard of the future. I want him to be the equivalent of Sam Cosmi at right guard on the left side. I want to start putting the pieces of this offensive line in place and locking them in. Lock them up. Lock him up. I want to lock these pieces into place. I want Laramie Tunsil at left tackle for the next 4 to 5 years. I want Brandon Coleman at left guard for the next 4 to 5 years. We already got Cosmi under contract for the next 4 years. Biadasz is under contract for the next 2 years. And if they've hit a home run on Josh Conley Jr., you can lock him in for the next 5 years. That is what I'm trying to do. And Coleman is a big piece of that. He's a huge part of that. When they drafted him, I remember the call, and he said, you're going to play somewhere on this offensive line, and you're going to help us somewhere on this offensive line. AP didn't know where. He just knew, I'm getting myself an athlete and a guy that is a leader that we know we can trust, and he's going to figure it out. We don't know where, but he's going to figure it out. They tried him at left. That was cool, but we feel like we can do better than left tackle. Stick him at left guard, and I think that's going to be his calling card. So what I'm looking for from Brandon Coleman in year 2 is I'm looking for him to solidify himself as the left guard that we need moving forward. And I want to see him get comfortable. I'm not expecting Pro Bowl caliber play year 1 of a new position. But I am, and there will be some mistakes and there'll be some growing pains. But what I'm looking for is when we play against Philadelphia and we play against the Chiefs with Chris Jones, and we play against some of these teams with these ferocious interiors. I want that shit awfully quiet on the inside. Between Biadasz, Cosmi, and Coleman, I don't want to see our pocket deteriorating. I don't want to see the pocket collapsing. I want Jayden to be able to stand tall with nobody around him. That Eagles shit that Jalen Hurts has. That's the shit I want for my quarterback. He's a huge part of that. That's what I'm looking for from Brandon Coleman. Closer to 100% of the snaps. Get cozy and comfy at left guard. Solidify that spot. And let's take that next step to becoming a Pro Bowl caliber guard and being the equivalent to Sam Cosmi at right guard. Luke McCaffrey. Let's talk about his 2024 campaign as a rookie. Luke McCaffrey played in all 17 games. He made 4 starts, if you recall. Those starts came very early in the season. We were all hyped up. Remember how last camp went? We were all hyped up. The De'Ami Brown documentary video. De'Ami's getting first team reps. De'Ami in the first preseason game with Jayden Daniels has the big catch down the sideline versus the Jets. So we're all hyped like, oh shit, De'Ami, oh shit. And then we get to week 1 and De'Ami ass ain't even out there for real. He ain't start the game. It was Luke McCaffrey started. Like, what is this shit? Can't get jiggy to this shit. Where's De'Ami? Well, it was Luke. And most of Luke's production came early in the season. That Tampa Bay game, the week 3 game was his biggest catch of the season, 30 yards on that 4th down catch and run where he almost scored. Luke McCaffrey, 18 catches, 168 yards. And I forgot all about this. The man still has not scored an NFL touchdown. We have not gotten this man an NFL score yet. I forgot about that part. Because even Ben Sinnott scored last year. You know, and you just at some point, with all the points we scored, all the ass whoopings we dished out, all the 40 burgers that we ate last season, you would have thought that Luke McCaffrey was, hey, let me throw this burger on the grill real quick, man. Let me throw my shit up there real fast. Not once was he a part of any of that. He was the guy that got you to the 1. That was his claim to fame. He could never get the ball across that thick white line that separates the player field from the end zone. There were opportunities like that Bears game. If Andrew Wiley doesn't give up that pressure and Jayden doesn't get hit and still throws one of the most remarkable passes we've seen all season, and it didn't count. Luke is wide open in the back corner of the end zone. I still don't know how that football got to him. He couldn't get his feet down, though. We got to get this man a touchdown. He didn't get one last year. He had 18 catches on 24 targets. So the same thing I said about Ben Sinnott. I said whatever his catch total is next year, he's going to have 6 more targets. That's what happened for Luke this year. 6 more targets than catches. He played 36% of the offensive snaps, which sounds about right for a 3rd-round pick, wide receiver. And when you look at all the shit that they had, Noah Brown and his emergence, and then De'Ami Brown and Olamide Zaccheaus, he was pretty far down the depth chart. So to play 36% sounds about right. Sounds about right. But here's what a lot of people forget. Once there were injuries to guys like Austin Eckler, Luke McCaffrey had to jump back there and return kicks. He had 10 kickoff returns for 299 yards. No touchdowns, but it's 29 yards per return. That's damn near 30 a return. And he had some really good returns. Now, I don't ever want to see Luke McCaffrey returning another kick in my life for this team. But it's good to know that if we have to break that glass in case of an emergency, Luke is capable. That's what he showed us last year. There's a little more value he can add if that has to happen. So here's the case with Luke McCaffrey. He changed the number from 12 to 11. We're off to a good start already. We're already better than we were a season ago, just off the strength of him wearing the double sticks. Those aces look so much better than that ace deuce did. we have to keep in mind that last year was just the third year that he's played the receiver position in his life. It's a former quarterback we're talking about. So he was still adjusting. Came into the NFL. They put, just like they're doing with Jayden Lane right now. And remember, we heard this from Cliff Kingsbury last year, and he said it again last week. They put a lot on Luke McCaffrey as a rookie last year and asked him to learn every single spot at the receiver position. They're doing the same thing with Jayden Lane right now. Putting a lot on his plate, moving him around, asking him to learn all of this shit, overloading his brain to see how much he can withstand and retain. That was a lot for a guy that was just playing the receiver position for the third year in his life. And you look at what, they were asking the receivers to do. He blocked his ass off last year. So we know he can do that. And here's what we know about Luke McCaffrey. We know what he is and we know what he isn't now, too. He ain't this break you off separator, which I didn't think he was coming out of Rice anyway. Like, he's not this snap off at the stem of a route, lose a dude at the bus stop, and is wide open. But what he is a guy that gets lost out there because he's not getting a lot of opportunities. He is a guy that I think you can throw it to, and he's got sure hands. And he's tough. You could throw it to him in traffic. And I think you're going to see him get more involved this year. I think they're going to make a concerted effort to get Luke McCaffrey more involved in the offense this year. There are a lot of guys at the receiver position. I don't have to tell you that. Obviously, there's Terry. Obviously, there's Deebo Samuel. They brought back Noah Brown. Jayden Lane is now in the mix. Does Jayden Lane get in front of the line ahead of Luke McCaffrey? I don't think so. Contrary to some of your beliefs, I don't think he's jumping Luke McCaffrey in line. I think, and this is another one of those situations where they drafted Luke, and would they have loved if Luke could have been more productive in his rookie season? Sure. But they drafted him, and last year, indirectly, because of guys like Noah Brown, who we did not know was going to be available and end up here. You have to keep that in mind. It's not like Noah Brown was here when they drafted him. Noah Brown got cut. That was a surprise cut by the Texans, and we benefited because of it. They didn't know that Noah Brown was going to be here and assume that second wide receiver role. But we all knew once Noah Brown was cut. And we picked him up. We said, well, that's wide receiver 2 right there. Despite all of that De'Ami Brown shit, that's wide receiver 2. And damn if he wasn't last year. Well, this year, you know who the players are. We know who all the guys are. There won't be this extra guy that's thrown into the mix that slides in front of Luke McCaffrey, potentially. Now, we'll see what happens with Michael Gallup. We'll see what happens with KJ Osborne and how well those guys perform and where they end up in the pecking order, if at all, on this roster. But I look at Luke McCaffrey, and I think he's 4th in the pecking order at receiver, behind Terry, Deebo, and Noah Brown. And I think you're going to see him evolve this year. And I don't think he's ever going to live up to a 3rd round status. This is why I don't advocate for overdrafting guys, because people are going to look for him to be a day 2 producer. And I just don't know if he'll ever be that. Here's what he'll be. He'll be a guy that will live anywhere between 300 to 500 yards. And as a 3rd or 4th option, that is tremendous. But you don't usually draft 3rd or 4th options in the 3rd round. That's the problem. You're looking to unearth a gem in the 3rd round. You're trying to draft a wide receiver 2, or you could get lucky like the Texans did and draft Nico Collins and draft yourself a 1, or like we did with Terry McLaurin and find yourself a 1. That's what you're looking for in the 3rd round. No worse than a 2. You leave the 3rd and 4th and 5th options for day 3. Well, they spent the 3rd round pick on him. So he's going to disappoint some of you, I think. I'm not disappointed because I know what he is. I know what he is. And they drafted him a year early. And maybe if they don't draft Luke McCaffrey last year, maybe they would have taken a receiver. And I think in a much deeper draft class, they would have taken another receiver this year instead of Jalen Lane, who really they brought here for special teams purposes. But he can do more than just return punts. He can be a receiver. I got Luke McCaffrey this year, not touching the ball on special teams at all. So let's remove that from the equation. But I do have him being a much bigger part of this offense. I think he's going to top just barely 300 yards receiving this year and be very dangerously close to the highest total of De'Ami Brown's career. I think De'Ami Brown's highest total was this year. I think he just hit north of 300 yards receiving. I think Luke McCaffrey is going to be knocking on the door of that this year. I got Luke McCaffrey catching the football 32 times, so 14 more catches than he had a season ago, for 302 yards. He finally gets on the board in the touchdown department. He's going to score 3 times this year. And he's going to do that on 40 targets. He's going to play in all 17 games. He's not going to start a single game. But he will play more offensive snaps. Despite having potentially more traffic in front of him than last year, he will play in more offensive snaps this year. He played in 36% of the offensive snaps a season ago. He'll play 42% of the offensive snaps this season. Jordan McGee. This is the guy that I look at, and you know I'm a big Jordan McGee fan. This is the guy I look at, and I'm looking for the biggest jump because he just really didn't play last year, right? Jordan McGee played in 8 games last year, started 1 game a season ago. He played in 3% of the defensive snaps for the Commanders in his rookie season. He played 64% of the special teams snaps. So expect the special teams percentage to continue to be high, right? And that's relatively high for only playing in 8 games. But that also speaks to the lack of punting that went on by this team. And so there wasn't as much special teams snaps that he missed, because he missed a lot of the early portion of the season when we weren't punting very often. And so he still was able to play in 64% of the snaps on special teams despite only playing in 8 games. That said, he's the X factor for me defensively. Like, part of the reason I felt like we struggled stopping the run last year, yeah, we could have been better up front on the defensive line. And there was a concerted effort made this offseason to get better up front, which needed to happen. However, we didn't, again, I can't stress this enough. We weren't getting gashed between the C gaps. We were getting gashed outside of it. We're getting gashed on the edges. Anything out on the perimeter, we just weren't good because we weren't fast enough defensively. And that's where Jordan McGee comes in. Like, for as good as Bobby Wagner is, Bobby Wagner was never a blazer at linebacker, but at his age now, he's definitely not getting out there as fast as he once did. And a lot of those runs were away from Frankie Louvu's side, right? Louvu might be lined up on the weak side of the defense. They run a toss to the strong side, and Louvu's nowhere to be found because he's all the way on the other side of the field, or vice versa. Louvu's lined up on the strong side of the formation. They run a toss to the weak side, and Louvu can't get all the way over there. And you got an extra safety in the game, or you got one of these other linebackers in here who like Michael Walker, who's ass. Pretty much, you're stuck. You're not going to be able to do the things you want to do. In comes Jordan McGee. And I like McGee as a guy in coverage. I like McGee as a guy that can blitz the quarterback. And I like McGee's ability to attack the line of scrimmage. So he offers a number of different things that we weren't necessarily the best at last season. Like, there's certain instances where if you're going to blitz your linebacker in the A-gap, I might prefer it to be Jordan McGee over Bobby Wagner. Right? So I think you can see Jordan McGee really make an impact here. The biggest thing he has to do, the first thing, is he's got to stay healthy. The first thing that jumps out at you is he played in 8 games last year. He missed over half the games. So right there is where we start with him. You got to stay healthy. 17 is what you're aiming for, but hey, just give me 14 games, bro. At least 14 games. That 3% of the defensive snaps, I mean, again, he didn't play. So, I mean, he missed all of the preseason. He played in the first preseason game against the Jets, got hurt, and that was pretty much it for him. So he wasn't able to gain the trust of the coaching staff so that they felt comfortable putting him out there. It took a while for them to feel comfortable putting him out on the field defensively. You build up that trust this offseason. You get out there in the preseason. You command the defense. You do the things that they need to see you do to feel comfortable putting you out there. If all of those things take place and if he checks off all of those boxes, that 3% to me blossoms to something like 35% of the defensive snaps. So the key for McGee is health. We'll go from there. Start there, be healthy, and then we'll go from there. But I see his defensive snap percentage being somewhere in that 25 to 35% range, which is a lot considering you got 2 all-pro linebackers already on the field in Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. You ain't taking those guys off the field. But you can add a Jordan McGee on the field. And we play a lot of teams that are going to run the football and not going to try to hide it. So you're going to need that third backer on the field, which is why I think he's going to play a lot of snaps this year. Chargers are going to run the football. Falcons are going to run the football. Obviously, the Eagles are going to run the football. Twice, I may add. So, and there's plenty more teams on the schedule. Denver's going to run the football. So, we better be prepared to stop it. Green Bay's going to run the football. I said this already. Right out of the gates, we're going to be tested. Our run defense is going to be tested. Because in those first 5 weeks or so, you're playing teams that are going to run the football. McGee may play a huge role in that. So I'm looking for him to be, let's just be healthy first. We'll go from there. Dominique Hampton, your 6th-round pick from last year. He was active for 1 game, and he played 6 special teams snaps. That was it. So he made a positional switch from safety to linebacker. All I'm looking for from him is for him to prove that he can play linebacker, that he is a viable option at the linebacker position. That's all I'm looking for him. Force them to make you an active player on game days. He should feel threatened. He should feel threatened. They drafted another linebacker. They did not have to do that. They talk about competition. They took your equivalent, another 6th-round linebacker. You should feel threatened. We don't know how much longer Bobby Wagner is going to be here, but they got Jordan McGee for that. I think Frankie Louvu's got another contract here in Washington after this one expires. We'll see what he looks like 2 years down the road. But they drafted Kane Madrano. They brought in a slew of linebackers as undrafted guys to compete. They still got Nick Bellore on this roster. You don't have to make the roster if you're Dominique Hampton. I think they believe in Dominique Hampton. But he's going to have to prove it this camp and this preseason. He's going to have to prove it. I'm looking forward to watching him in the preseason. He's going to be among a list of probably 8 to 10 guys that I'll be really focusing in on during the preseason. Because I don't expect to see a lot of the starters, especially on the offensive side of the football, because they're going to get those joint practices going. And so you're not going to see a lot of those guys, when the games actually take place. But there are going to be some guys that I want, especially of the young variety, that I'm really going to be eyeballing. And he'll be one of those guys where I'm going to be really watching to see what he looks like as a linebacker. We got a little taste of it last year, watching him play. We got a sneak peek. Now I want to see, after a full offseason, being in that room with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu and taking notes and, studying the game from a different position. He already had the physicality even as a safety. So now I want to see what it looks like. Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I had 0 expectations for him last year. 0. As a 7th-round pick. I didn't even love the pick. And he came from Notre Dame. And I didn't even love the pick. He grew on me. The Cincinnati game, I thought he played really well. And so that heightened my expectations from 0 to like 5%. Okay, he can actually play. He can actually help. I eased up on him after that. He played in 12 games last year, did Javonte. Started 1. He had 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits. He played on 13% of the special teams snaps, and he played a quarter of the defensive snaps, so 25%. I don't really know what to make of Javonte Jean-Baptiste yet. Because in my mind, he's still a 7th-round pick, and they brought in all this depth on the defensive line. We don't know what Kinlaw is being viewed as. They brought in, and they brought back almost everybody. So not only did they bring in a bunch of new guys, they also brought back all the guys that were here last year for the most part. So you already had Dorrance Armstrong. You bring back Cleveland Farrell. You bring back Jalen Holmes. You bring back, I think that was the last guy they brought back. Then you bring in Javon Kinlaw. You bring in Jacob Harris. Shucks. Jacob Martin, right? Because you got all these guys, this depth in front of you. And I don't really know where he fits into all of this. So there's so much depth at defensive end and defensive tackle. I'm still like, I don't want to forget about him, but I really don't know what to do with him right now. And unless there's some massive leap that he's about to take, I just don't know if he gets more than the 25% of the defensive snaps he saw last year. He could easily make this team and end up being the equivalent of Dominique Hampton last year, where he's because we needed Javonte Jean-Baptiste. We did not have the depth along the defensive line last year. So we needed him. If the guys that they signed pan out, somebody's going to be on the outside looking in. Like Eddie Goldman, they brought him here too. Like I haven't even brought him up. I get it. He's a defensive tackle, but we're just talking about the defensive line in general. Everybody can't make the roster. So I'm just looking at Javonte Jean-Baptiste and I'm just going, I don't know, bro. Last year, you made the team because it was the first draft. Everybody was making the squad, no matter if you were going to play or not, right? Dominique Hampton was proof of that. They had no intentions of playing him. They were changing his position, and he still made the team because that's where we were roster-wise. We needed depth on the defensive line, and so you benefited from that. But as a 7th-round pick in year 2 on a team that waited to the NFC Championship game and went out and remodeled the entire defensive line, I don't know if you're going to be a part of this remodel. Just being honest. We'll see. They did draft him, and that does count for something. But I'm not very optimistic. But then again, I wasn't very optimistic last year, but last year was different. Last year was different. The depth was not there. Hell, they even brought back Carl Davis. I don't know why, but they did. There's a lot of guys on that defensive line right now. A lot of guys. Javonte may be one of those dudes they decide, hey, we got a spot for you on the practice squad. We'll see. We'll see. I don't have a lot of confidence that he's going to be a part of the plan. Now, he may ultimately, due to, unforeseen circumstances, end up being a part of it. But right now, if this shit goes down the way that they plan, I don't know if Javonte Jean-Baptiste is a part of the plan. So as you can see, I've got very high hopes and expectations. To hell with hopes. This is the next level. Hope is when you're not sure, you just want the best, right? You're kind of taking a leap of blind faith. That ain't what I'm doing. I got expectations. I expect this to happen. I got real high, lofty expectations for the 2024 class going into their second year. Now let's get to the 2025 draft picks, our rookies, and what the expectations are for them. Josh Connolly Jr., this is more of hope, right? It's less of expectation, more of hope, but I do have expectations for them, and I'm hoping that they meet these, right? Josh Connolly Jr. First round pick, 29th overall selection. The prevailing thought is he's your starting right tackle day one. But I've already floated this out there, and we'll see. We've heard great things about him thus far, but we won't know until, like, we already knew he was a really good athlete. We already knew he had nimble feet. We already knew he could move. So all of that is going to be on display without pads. The biggest knock on him was how physical could he be? When it came time for him to anchor down, when somebody's bull rushing him and trying to get him off the spot, how physical can he be? Is he ready for that level of physicality at the NFL level on a consistent basis? We won't know until we get to training camp. Everybody saw the viral video of him at the Senior Bowl with Mike Green. And while that one clip did happen, he ultimately won the best offensive lineman of the week at the Senior Bowl. So it's not like he was ass. At the end of the day, Josh Connolly Jr. could end up being our starting right guard. And Andrew Wiley. Look, they're doing the thing that they always do. DQ always says we're not going to miss a step. They're not crowning this kid. The first, and again, look, we don't even have our official 5 guys there because Laramie Tunsil's not there. But that would, if you were keeping score at home, that would make it even more likely that Connolly would be starting. He's not starting. All right. Andrew Wiley's running with the ones right now at tackle. You expected that, though. They don't give anybody jobs. You got to earn it. So Connolly's going to have to show what he can do. I wouldn't be shocked. And I got a great email from somebody today, and I'm going to share that email with you guys. When we go, Louie's lurking in the comments. I think I'm going to share it with you guys then. But it wouldn't shock me if Connolly is starting at right guard to begin his career, or he's doing the platoon thing that Brandon Coleman did on the left side with Cornelius Lucas with Andrew Wiley on the right side, where Wiley starts the game, then Connolly comes in, and they're, alternating series, and you look at the box score in terms of the snap count at the end of the game, and Wiley's got 51% and Connolly's got 49%. And we get to week 3 or 4, and they finally flip-flop it where Connolly's starting the game and he's got more of the snaps, and then Wiley has less, and then they start phasing him out, and then by the time you get to week 6 or 7, Josh Connolly Jr. is your permanent right tackle starter, getting all of the reps. That could happen too. Or in true first-round fashion, he can go in there, take the right tackle position by the horns and say, "This is my shit," plant his flag, and be ready to start week 1, which is all what we all hope, anticipate, and look forward to him doing. That's my anticipation, is that he's our starter week 1. It wouldn't shock me if any of those other 2 scenarios took place, where he's platooning at right tackle like Brandon Coleman did to start the season. I think Coleman only did that because he got hurt. If not for the injury, Brandon Coleman was your starter week 1 at left tackle, and there wouldn't have been that platooning thing going on. So I don't anticipate that happening unless something, again, some unforeseen set of circumstances arises and we end up in that same kind of predicament. I think he's going to be your week 1 starter at right tackle. And I expect him to play well this season, I may add. I think the biggest set of expectations have been placed on Trey Amos going into the upcoming season. And much like I just talked about with Brandon Coleman and Javonte Jean-Baptiste, guys that were thrusted into positions last year that they weren't maybe necessarily ready for, but due to unforeseen circumstances and sheer necessity, they had to step up Same with Johnny Newton. Johnny Newton wasn't prepared to be starting after week 6 in the Ravens game. He didn't have a choice. Right? Brandon Coleman, I don't know if he thought he was coming in here to start at left tackle. I mean, we did. When we drafted, hey, that's our left tackle, but he knew he was going to be playing somewhere. But out of necessity, I don't even know if it was necessity, because they could have put Corin Luke at left tackle and left him there, and I think we would have been fine. And they could have put Brandon Coleman somewhere else, and he would have probably thrived. But they decided to go with him at left tackle out of necessity, right? And it ended up being necessity because Cole Luke was injured last year, so it ended up being out of necessity. And I just talked about Javonte Jean-Baptiste having to play last year at defensive end out of necessity. But Amos is coming in here, and it's unfortunate for him, the amount of expectations and pressure and responsibility that's going to be thrown into his lap by fans, because we're trying to win the Super Bowl. And unfortunately, he showed up on the scene on a team that, from a cornerback standpoint, they need help. And he is it. There's a sector of the fan base that doesn't believe in Marshawn Lattimore. Doesn't think he can stay healthy, and even when he is healthy, doesn't think he's any good, think he's washed. There's another sector of the fan base that says, why are you moving Mikey? He did really good out there. Just leave him alone, which isn't the right thing. And then you look at the other guys that are behind Trey Amos. They provide wonderful depth, but they lack in other areas. Jonathan Jones is a better nickel than he is a boundary. He can go out there, similar to Mikey. He can go out there, but he's undersized, and he's going to have his hands full because A.J. Brown plays in this division. So that is a problem. We play against Drake London. We play against teams with bigger wide receivers like the Broncos and Cortland Sutton. You don't want to see a 5'9" corner out there fighting for his life. But if that's what it's got to be, that's what it's got to be. But that's not ideal. So all of a sudden, Trey Amos is thrusted into the starting lineup, and we're looking at him like, hey, we need you to go out there, and you might have to perform like a borderline number 1 corner. That's not fair to that young man. But that's what we're going to ask him to do. And look, I'm not ashamed of doing it. But I also know that with that great power comes great responsibility and great F-ups. He's young. And I've always said this. The cornerback position is no country for old men. That's a young man's position. That's for the young boys. All right? Let the young boys play out there at the cornerback position. Hey, if you old, that's all y'all Jalen Ramsey stands out there. Leave them old ass corners at home. Leave them old ass corners at home. But if you young and you dumb, you're going to get you some, right? You're going to get blessed. These veteran receivers, they're going to show you how it's done. And so it's baptism by fire. So he's going to get beat. He's going to make a mistake. He's not going to be perfect, but he's going to make his fair share of plays too. I'm expecting him to play well. And I'm expecting for him to hold his own. If Marshawn Lattimore returns to form, he shouldn't be better than him this year. But maybe next year, we might be singing a different tune. But what I'm looking for from Trey Amos is for him to lock down one side of the field. I can't speak for anybody. I think Lattimore is going to do that, right? Be good enough on the other side. Amos needs to be just slightly below his equivalent on the opposite side. So that when A.J. Brown goes in motion and he's now on Trey Amos's side, there's no drop-off. You're not taking advantage of somebody now. And whether it's the Marshawn Lattimore, A.J. Brown show, Smitty ain't getting off on the other side. Because we got a guy now. We got a guy. So all that shit you used to get away with where, oh, man, Jamar Chase getting off and shit, T. Higgins still can do whatever the hell he want to do. That shit is canceled. That's what I need Trey Amos to provide for us is, hey, your number one over there with Marshawn Lattimore, let's see what Marshawn does. But if you got a second receiver, like the Cowboys, hey, shut that George Pickens shit down, man. Shut that George Pickens shit down. I think Trey can do that. I'm expecting him to solidify himself as a starting caliber NFL corner and one that we could see, like us as fans can visualize him being a Pro Bowl All-Pro corner. That's the kind of play we want to see from him. He may never be an All-Pro corner. He may never be a Pro Bowl corner. But you could see it based off what we watched in his rookie season. That's how we want to feel. Like we never said after Benjamin St. Juice's first season, hey, Juice got a chance to be a Pro Bowl All-Pro corner. We were just like, hey, Juice could be a starter in this league. Potentially. I want to be able to say, hey, man, Trey Amos might be a Pro Bowl All-Pro type corner, man. He's got that kind of ability. We ain't had a second corner in Washington since what? How far back you got to go when we had two solid starting corners? What we talking to D'Angelo Hall? Who was opposite of D Hall? Shit, I couldn't even tell you. The last time, okay. The last time, who was opposite of Ronald Darby in 2020? Because I felt like our defense wasn't too bad in 2020. I can't even remember who was the corner opposite of. The last time we probably had a 1-2 punch at corner was probably, I wanted to say Josh Norman and Bashad Breeland, but Bashad Breeland fell the hell apart when they went out and got Josh Norman because he thought he was a number one. They went and got Jano, and he lost his mind. So I can't even say it was those two. Oh, okay. So it was 2020 because they went and got Kendall Fuller in 2020. Remember? That was Fuller's first year. They went and got K Full and they brought in Darby. That was the last time we had a 1-2 punch at corner. 2020. K Full and Darby. So this will be the first time we had a legitimate 1-2 punch since 5 years ago. and look, we were goddamn, losing our minds just trying to think of what it looked like prior to 2020. We couldn't even think of a combination, a tandem. So just know it's been a long time. Let's see if these two can turn into something that we can rely on. Jaylen Lane, 4th round pick. Man, I'm excited. Jaylen Lane, you know, I wanted a punt returner for the longest time. So just off the strength of his ability to do that, I'm excited. But I think he has a chance to be a dynamic return man and a guy that is dynamic with the ball in his hands. And I think they're excited about him doing it. I talked about us being a more dynamic and explosive offense. It's because of guys like Deebo Samuel and Jaylen Lane that are going to bring that excitement and spice to this offense and explosiveness. And he's a guy like we saw at Virginia Tech that you can get it to him in a multitude of ways. But what we need him to be is what De'Ami Brown was able to provide us with last year in the absence of Noah Brown. And that was another vertical threat to stretch the football field opposite of Terry McLaurin. We don't have another guy that can just flat out pick him up and put him down. A guy that threatens defenses vertically. It can't just be Terry McLaurin. And there isn't another receiver on this roster that has that kind of speed. People keep talking about Luke McCaffrey ran a 4.46. Luke McCaffrey ain't beat nobody vertically. Stop that shit. Stop it. You watch his college tape at Rice. He wasn't running past dudes at Rice. Jaylen Lane is the only hope that we have. You think if Luke McCaffrey could run past people vertically, you don't think they would have put him out there to do that? Trust me, they would have done that. Jaylen Lane is our only hope to have somebody out there that can run and stretch the football field vertically and threaten teams vertically. And I want to see it in the preseason, to be honest. I want to see them take a shot to him, and maybe they won't. Maybe they want to keep that under wraps. They don't want to show other teams around the league what he's capable of. They don't want to show too much in the preseason. But I just selfishly, I would like to see Jaylen Lane get vertical because we didn't see enough of it at Virginia Tech. But I'm definitely looking at Jaylen Lane as a true difference maker amongst this draft class. A guy that can come in, and I wouldn't be shocked if he has a punt return for a touchdown this year. I wouldn't be shocked. We got enough fiends on this punt return unit, just on special teams in general. I wouldn't be shocked if he's able to break one. There were some lanes last year, some opportunities where I was like, man, if only we had a dynamic punt returner. Now we do. I'm going to say it right now. Jaylen Lane will have a combined no less than 5 touchdowns on the season. He's going to be dynamic for us in his rookie year. I can see one being a punt return. He can throw the football. I can see him throwing for 1. He's going to run for 2 and maybe catch another 1 or 2. So I can see him with 6 total touchdowns, but the number's 5. No less than 5 total touchdowns on the season for Jaylen Lane. He's going to be a problem. Kane Medrano, 6th round pick, linebacker out of UCLA. He gives me Dominique Hampton vibes from last year's draft, where he's going to make the team because it was only a 5-player draft and they're not looking to cut any of their draft picks right now, at least not in year 1. And so he'll be here, but how much can he actually contribute is the question. Now, Dominique Hampton, was not able to differentiate himself enough to be someone that they thought highly enough of to make him active on game days because of his special teams prowess. He just wasn't ready. Kay Madrano might be, because of his speed, someone that they look at and say, no. We got to find a way to get this guy active on game days. But now he missed a lot of tackles, too, in college. That was one of the knocks on him, was a very high missed tackle rate. And so that's not someone you want on your special teams unit if you're not getting guys on the ground. So he's going to have to prove that he is an asset on special teams in order to be active on game days. I see him as a redshirt guy in his rookie season. I truly do. And so he'll be on the roster, the 53 man, but he'll be inactive every week, just like Dominique Hampton was a season ago. Now, it'll be interesting because I talked about this at the linebacker position. All of a sudden, we got a lot of linebackers. We didn't have a lot of them last year. All of a sudden, we got a lot of linebackers. Because McGee started off the season last year on PUP list or injury reserve or whatever he was on. I think he was on a PUP list. So he was out for the first 6 games or so, was Jordan McGee. So you didn't have to worry about that. So there was space where you could make Dominique Hampton active or a part of the roster. He might have got cut if Jordan McGee was healthy. Who knows? Or maybe they would have kept Dominique Hampton just like they did, and they might have cut somebody else like Michael Walker, and then maybe brought him back later or put him on the practice squad. But Kay Madrano strikes me as a guy that they're not going to cut. They drafted him. They like him. They want him here. But I don't see him having a true role in his rookie season. See him having a role. So I'm not expecting much of him this year. It's next year where I'm going to start looking at Kay Madrano and saying, can we carve out a niche for you? And maybe it happens at some point in his rookie season. But I don't see a lot for him right now. And then last but not least, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill. This is a kid that I think a lot of us are super excited about. And I think he's got a chance to take that running back position by storm. He's at the very top of my list of guys I'll be watching extremely close in the preseason because he's going to get a lot of opportunities in the preseason, and I think he is going to kill it in the preseason. And off the strength of him dominating in the preseason and I think killing it in training camp, he's going to turn some heads. He's going to open their eyes. And they kind of know what they have, but I don't think they truly know what they have. Then they're going to see it, and they're going to be like, oh, this is different than the shit we putting on the field. And they're going to have to find ways to get him involved. It'll start slow, like it's supposed to. Same shit they doing with Josh Connerly. Right? It'll start slow. You know, he might get 2 touches on 6 snaps in week 1. And then that number might grow to 4 touches and opportunities in week 2. And then it may get to 6 in week 3, and it may stay at 6 for the next 3 weeks. And then all of a sudden something happens, or he takes advantage of one of those games and he goes bonkers, and they're like, yo, we got to give him more opportunities. And the next thing you know, you look up, and now he's getting 11 touches. And then he's getting 14 touches. And then all of a sudden, he's now your lead back. And all it takes is one injury to Brian Robinson. All it takes is one injury to Austin Eckler. Now, what Bill is going to have to also prove he can do is catch the ball, something he wasn't asked to do in college basically at all, and pass protect, more importantly. So if he can do those things, he may find himself on the field a lot sooner rather than later. But here's my expectation for Bill in his rookie season. At some point during the season, he will reveal himself to be a lead tailback in this league. He may not actually be our starting tailback at any point this year. It may not happen. But there will be a game or two where you go, yo, that's it right there. That's the shit right there we was talking about. There it is. And you're going to say, yo, without question, he's our starting running back next year. And we go into next year with Bill as our starting tailback. I think you're going to see it at some point this year, and he's going to actually become our lead tailback at some point this season. I don't think we're going to have to wait until next year. But, you know, we'll see what Brian Robinson does. You know, I'm a big Brian Robinson Jr. fan and a believer. And Eckler is still playing well. So we'll see what happens. But I'm thinking right around week 7, 8, or 9. Bill's getting in, and he ain't coming back out. Bill's getting in the game, and he ain't coming back out. That's what I see happening. So those are my expectations. So let me get to the comment section and I'll get you guys out of here. Jorn, been a member for 38 months. Salute to you, Jorn. Rob, you been a member for 45 months. Salute to Rob, you, who writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Rob, you? If they didn't trade for Tunzel, you think they would have trusted Connolly to start at left tackle? Yep, I do. I think they would have done the same thing they're doing with him at right tackle, which is, you know, not have him as your penciled in starter right now. But eventually he would have been your week 1 starter at left tackle. Yes, I do believe that. And I do believe Brandon Coleman would have been in play at right tackle instead of just being relegated to guard. You know, they're saying that it's a competition and Coleman's going to get a chance at right tackle. He's a guard. And I think they realized that, which is why they drafted Connolly. But make no mistake about it. If there's no Tunzel, Connolly's starting at left tackle. Yep, I do believe that's what they would have done. Door Gunner, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Door Gunner writes, only 2 minutes late tonight, Lou. Much better, LOL. Actually, I was 1 minute late. Ass. I was only 1 minute late. All right. I be trying, man. I be trying. I appreciate the acknowledgement, though. But if you're going to come at me, get my shit right. I was 1 minute late tonight. AJ Meehan, been a member for 34 months. Who writes, I don't think people realize how crazy our offense is going to be this year with this new O-line, adding Debo, speed with Lane, finally speed to complement B-Rob with Eckler, JD5 winning MVP, book it. They've upgraded this offense tremendously around him. And I just love that they took the strength of this team and made it stronger. Nothing wrong in doing that, while simultaneously trying to improve the defense. There's only so much you can do, right, in an offseason. I've already made that abundantly clear. We only had 5 picks because of some of the moves that we made to make the offense stronger, right? You saw the window of opportunity around your young quarterback. You realize they not like us. They not like us. They not like us. Like, he's different. These other teams, these other quarterbacks, they not like us. So everybody wants to compare us to Houston and CJ Stroud. They not like us. They not like us. They not like us. Like, this shit is different over here. One, we don't have Mahomes and Allen and Jackson and Burrow to contend with. It's different over here. And two, Jayden Daniels is like that. It's different. So they said, hey, we going all in, just like the Texans did last year. We going all in. But our shit's going to look different because our quarterback's different. And this line is going to look different. And the weapons they put around him, like you said, is different. And I just think this shit has a chance to be so dangerous, bro. This offense has a chance to be so dangerous. Just Andre, thank you for being a member for 40 months. Salute to you. With Bill and JD5, with Bill, JD5 won't have to carry the run game. I mean, that is the hope. There's no guarantees in this. And again, we don't know when Bill is going to get the opportunity to tote the rock. We don't know when that's going to come. But what we're hoping is the run game collectively, whomever's out there, is enough to where Jayden doesn't have to shoulder as much of that load, right? He does not have to carry that burden of being our leading rusher any longer, right? He's still going to run the ball. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. Excuse me. I can't stress this enough. He's still going to be a threat as a runner. He's still going to get carries. He's still going to be a dual threat. So he may still end up being at the top of our, leaderboard at rushing the football. But if it's done correctly, he shouldn't be your leading rusher. Even if he has 1,000 yards. Lamar Jackson, I think, had 1,000 yards last year. Derrick Henry had 1,800 yards. So he still wasn't the leading rusher, and he wasn't even close. That's what you strive for. That is not what we have. We do not have Derrick Henry. We do not have the Ravens offensive line as a run blocking unit. So we're not that. But we should be able to have a good enough situation where he's not your leading rusher, but it could end up where he's your leading rusher again, right? B-Rob gets off to a great start, then, something happens. He's out of the lineup. Eckler's not going to lead your team in rushing. Then Bill gets in there. He's killing it. But let's say that doesn't happen until week 10. And so Jayden's played the whole season. B-Rob played half. Bill played half. You still got Eck in there. And all of a sudden, Bill's got 8-something. B-Rob's got 7-something. Eck's got 2-something. And Jayden's got 9-something or 1,000. Still your leading rusher. So you just never know. Just Andre, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, so JD5 is going to have a sophomore slump, but Nix or Caleb won't. JD5 and Stroud are different QBs. Stroud had no help, but JD5 didn't either. They're different quarterbacks, different situations, different organizations. I like what they've done around, and not to say that the Texans organization failed CJ Stroud, but that offensive line in front of him was not good. It was not good. And so I think Jayden's set up for success. And to your point, like, Stroud didn't have a ton of guys around him in his first season. It was a very similar setup. He had a number one wide receiver. He had a tight end, a veteran tight end that did wonders for him. And he had some guy, Noah Brown was there, stepped up, right? And he had other guys around him that stepped up that year. But it was really his number one guy, right? His tight end, and then other guys filled in the gaps. Tank Dell a little bit, Noah Brown, and so forth, so forth. Year 2, they went out, they got Diggs. Dell came back. You had all these receivers. Plus your tight end was back. They added Joe Mixon. He was dynamic. So it was supposed to be oh yeah, they setting him up for a run, and it didn't work out, right? I mean, he still won 10 games. They still won the division. They still won a playoff game, but it didn't work out. This is different. First of all, Jayden Daniels is a different animal at quarterback. That's the first thing. We talk about a whole totally different animal here. And the way they've built this roster is a little bit different. I think there's more sustainability. The Texans felt like they was pushing their chips in. And it's very similar to what they did with Debo, or what we doing with Debo, what they did with Stephon Diggs. It's very similar. It's a very similar approach. But we're all in on this offensive line. They didn't go out, trade for a tackle, and then draft another one after drafting a guy on the offensive line the year before. That's not what they did. They went out and got other pieces around him, but not on the offensive line to protect him. We built the trenches while still adding other pieces around him. So I feel really good about what we've done. And I don't know. Look, I'm not wishing a slump on any of these quarterbacks. That's not my thing. I don't need them to have a slump for our guy to be good. They could be good, and our guy could be good. Our guy's better. That's all I care about. Our guy's better. So we'll see what happens with Nix and with Caleb and JJ McCarthy and, all of these dudes that are a part of that, what I think is going to ultimately be this illustrious, 2024 quarterback draft class. We'll see what happens. But as far as I'm concerned, I just want my guy to ball. Really don't care what's going on with the rest of these dudes. Reese, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, bro, I've been saying this when I watch Ben's highlights. I don't see no Kyle Juszczyk blocking tight end. He can make plays. Look at his one catch against the Jets. Took like 4 people to tackle him. Look, it's easy to shit on Ben Sinnott because he didn't have the rookie season that people wanted him to have. But patience is a virtue. And I've said this numerous times. Ben Sinnott can hoop. And it's one of those situations where, due to circumstances in his rookie season, he didn't get the opportunities. And I don't think he was ready for it anyway, to be honest with you. But now, after seeing how it's done, watching a real, true technician and pro in Zach Ertz, being around him for a full year, seeing his work habits on and off the field, studying, learning the nuances of the tight end position at the NFL level, because at K-State, they used him more like an H-back. Go back and watch him at K-State. This man was lined up everywhere. Backfield, in tight, split out, detached as a U. Like, they moved him around. Wing back. He was all over the place. So they asked him to play more of a traditional role, but they also kind of kept some of the elements of what made him him by putting him in the backfield, sending him in motion, things of that nature. He had to really learn the tight end position at the NFL level. I think he's going to be so much better because he's an athlete. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Ben Sinnott is an athlete. So I think you're going to see Ben Sinnott play really well. And I think you're going to see his number called a lot more because I think they're going to be able to rely on him more so this season than they were able to in his rookie campaign. So that is going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up, take command. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow night. Should be Commanders Kings live over on the Commanders Kings channel. Then Thursday night, we should be back here live on this channel, whether it's a podcast episode or it's more Command Post Live. We'll see. Obviously, the NBA Finals are that night as well, Game 1. So I'll decide what I want to do on Thursday night, but we will definitely be live for the Commanders Kings tomorrow night or Wednesday night if you're on the East Coast tonight, over on the Commanders Kings channel. So with that said, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I think we're going to get some updates tomorrow as far as OTAs are concerned. I think the beat reporters and the media will be allowed to be out at the park. So looking forward to those updates, and hopefully we'll hear from some of the staff, head coach Dan Quinn. I'm thinking it'll be Joe Witt Jr. this time around, probably Jayden Daniels again, and then maybe one or two other guys, and then, you know, a couple of media scrums and things of that nature. So looking forward to seeing them out there, hearing from some of the staff, and we'll talk about all of those things and then some if that transpires. In any event, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you guys next time. Until then, God bless. Good night.